All right. Good morning, everyone. So just to confirm, you can see my screen, right? If I can get a thumbs up. I see Graciela in the little video. Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Good morning, by the way. Good morning. So just a reminder for everyone, so if you can all be muted, but if you have questions and you want to make comments during the presentation, feel free to add them to the chat box. But we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jose Espinosa. I am the program manager for the Friday Night Live program at the Youth Leadership Institute. And joining me, I have my supervisor, someone who is a legend in working with young people. And just yesterday, by the way, she just celebrated her 11-year anniversary at the Youth Leadership Institute. And so I'll go ahead and pass it over to Cynthia to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cynthia Rocha. I'm the Associate Director of Programs for the Youth Leadership Institute. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity and space to kind of share a little bit about the programs that we run within the Youth Leadership Institute. And thank you very much, Jose. I have been with the organization for 11 years now, specifically helping run the Friday Night Live program and our underage drinking prevention programs. And so I'm really excited that we had an opportunity to onboard Jose this year to help manage the programs on our behalf. And as Jose mentioned, we welcome any questions that you might have, drop them into the chat box. I'll be making sure that I'm taking note of those and we're answering them as we go along to answer folks' questions. Great. So as you said, this presentation is going to focus specifically on giving you a little bit of an insight and in a look into our organization. So the Youth Leadership Institute is a nonprofit organization that's been around for about 27 years, and this next year we'll be celebrating our 28th year doing youth development work. Our organization actually started by doing underage drinking prevention work in Marin County and San Francisco County. So doing this work has been part of the history of our organization for a very long time. The mission of our organization is to build communities where young people and their adult allies are able to come together to create positive community change that promotes social justice and racial equity. And part of that is also looking at health equity, which is why we've really dived into doing work around prevention, specifically around underage drinking prevention, substance use prevention, and other prevention efforts. The vision of our organization is really to build up the capacity of young people in the counties, the cities, and the communities that we serve so that they're involved in the process of leading and creating equitable change in their community that's hopefully going to create some really positive social, cultural change within those communities. So our organization is actually statewide. As I mentioned earlier, we actually started in the Bay Area and about 17 years ago opened up our office in the Central Valley. Our first office that was not in the Bay Area was actually a Fresno office. And since then, we've been able to expand our programs across the state. We have, we lead prevention and health equity programs across all of California in counties that include Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo, here in Fresno, Merced, Long Beach, and Eastern Coachella Valley. And we also, just a couple of years ago, opened up a satellite office in Madera. So just to give you a little bit of a lay of the land of how our programs work in Fresno, we, as a nonprofit, we hold several contracts to lead different kinds of youth initiative and youth development programs. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown of the programs that are actually housed in our Fresno office. We have a program that's called boys and men of color. It's a program that's funded by the California Endowment to specifically build up the capacity of young men of color in the city of Fresno to do work around elevating young men's voice and to involve young people in social justice work. We also have a program called the Mint Youth Coalition that stands for Mobilizing Youth to Nix Tobacco. It's a coalition and a cohort of young people where we build up their capacity to do advocacy work around tobacco prevention, specifically looking at recommending and educating and informing community about potential policy that can have positive impacts on community health. We also house our Hope Youth Leadership Program. It's a program that's targeted towards young women to build up Latina women's engagement in local government. So the idea is to expose them by educating them about local civic engagement, how local government offices are run for the purpose of trying to get more representation in our decision-making bodies. We also run the No Youth Media, which is a youth media program where we build up the capacity of young people to be storytellers, write articles, be journalists, and tell the stories of young people's experience from the perspective of youth. And then we also run the City of Fresno Youth Commission, which is a decision-making body that's held in the city of Fresno. They serve as an advisory capacity to our city council members and our mayor's office. Each of the city council members and the mayor have 2 representatives on the youth commission. And what they do is bring forward issues that are being experienced by young people, concerns, challenges. And what they do is work together to conduct research, come up with solutions, and then share those solutions and their recommendations with City Council to hopefully incite change. And then our last program, which is the program we'll be talking about today, is our RAAY program, which stands for Reducing Alcohol Access to Youth program, and our Friday Night Live programs. So the way that program is run is that we establish the Friday Night Live program in partnership with schools and school districts, as well as some housing sites and local community partnerships. And they bring about a Friday Night Live chapter or cohorts of young people where we build up their capacity to do health equity work and do work around underage drinking prevention, with their focus is to lead a reducing alcohol access to youth campaign.
And so within those program objectives, which the focus of today's presentation is on the reducing alcohol access to youth and Friday Night Live, we have program objectives that we are contracted to do. And so some of those pieces that we are contracted to do is to establish an adult ally council, which we actually meet quarterly. And so those council meetings are made up of parents, made up of any community member who would like to be part of that. And so we do those quarterly meetings for adults to be able to be part of an opportunity to hear about the work that we're doing, but then also be able to find ways in which they can partner with us and be able to support the young people's work. And so they get to hear what the projects and campaigns that the youth are working on, and then they can also figure out ways they can support that. And we'll talk a little bit more later on in the presentation regarding some specific ways that through that council that adults can actually get involved in. We also have we are required to establish a youth development coalition, and that is actually made up of other nonprofit organizations and different community-based organizations that make that up. We also have quarterly meetings that we hold for that coalition, and that is an opportunity for partners to be able to hear not just hear the work that we're doing, but then also be able to find ways in which we can collaborate, and sometimes also be able to find ways in which we can maximize the work that our young people are doing within the Friday Night Live program. We also are tasked with having 15 active sites. One exciting piece about this fiscal year is that we have just added a 16th site, which is actually McLean High School, which we've never been in. And so that's exciting in terms of bringing in a new chapter at a new site. And so that amount of sites we have throughout Fresno County. So we're located in different parts of Fresno County, such as Kerman, Greeley, Orange Cove, Selma, as well as in Fresno. And so, and San Joaquin. And so those active sites are spread out throughout the county. We also have what's called the Countywide Youth Council, also known as a YAL team, which actually stands for the Youth Advocacy Leadership League. And so that was a cool name that the youth actually came up with for their team. And that is an opportunity for young people from those 15 sites to be able to come together, and it's actually 1 to 2 representatives per site, and they make up this larger body that gets to work on something countywide. So kind of a larger scale project. And the YAL team actually gets to decide what are the projects that they want to take on for the year. So every year it looks slightly different. And so we're also tasked with having 10 RAAY projects across Fresno County. And that can look different. One of the exciting things about the work that we're doing this year is that it's actually going to be mostly social media. I know that we are, during this pandemic, we know that we can't meet with young people at this time, but we are going to be doing media campaigns with different messaging that the youth actually get to decide on. And those media campaigns can actually get to be through radio, through video, or just social media. And so this year is going to be a very heavy media year. And then the other component, which we're super excited about, is a youth-produced mini magazine. And a component of that magazine is going to incorporate, interviews and be able to find information regarding the use of alcohol and how we prevent that from getting in the hands of young people. But then also young people have already expressed interest in other topics that they want to include as part of that magazine. And so topics that are relevant to the issues that they're facing. So the youth are already super excited. We brought it up to the YAL team. And so that's exciting to hear already at this point. We also do community outreach for parents and caregivers and stakeholders throughout the year. And so this year, we know that it's going to look a little bit different. So there's the events that we are going to be doing are going to be after the shelter in place. And so regarding the Friday Night Live objectives, so 10 Friday Night Live sites, and we're required to have 10 Friday Night Live sites and 10 environmental prevention projects that are non-RAAY. And so those are opportunities where we're going to have at least 10 sites be able to design what are those additional projects that they want to touch on within the alcohol and drug use prevention. And so the next objective we have is training, technical assistance, and capacity building. So every year we do what's called a Fall Fest and a Spring Jam. Those are 2 events that we get to hold where all young people are invited to that, and it's a good opportunity for new youth to actually show up to that. But we have our veteran youth that actually get to lead those trainings along with staff. And so Cynthia talked a little bit about this youth and adult partnership and how we live that out. And so we really try to make sure that we include young people in that process of providing the trainings. And it's also powerful for other young people to see someone in their same age group to be able to lead a training, and it's more encouraging. And we realize that's one of the best ways for other young people to get involved. And then we have finally regional convenings in which we get to bring all of our youth. At the end of the year, for example, we have we have an event where we get to celebrate the youth for everything that they've done for the year. And so those are the program objectives for us. And I'll pass it to Cynthia.
Okay, so a little bit more context about the reducing alcohol access to youth. As Jose mentioned, these campaigns or these projects are really rooted in trying to reduce the onset age use, as well as reduce the percentage of young people who are reporting that they've tried alcohol in their lifetime, consumed alcohol in the last year, or consumed alcohol in the last 30 days. And so we utilize previously in the first iteration of this in this work, we utilized the California Healthy Kids Survey as our baseline. But since then, at the beginning of this contract cycle, in 2016, we had the opportunity to collaborate with our other prevention partner, which is the California Health Collaborative, and our evaluation partner, LPC, to develop a tool that's called the Fresno County Student Insight Survey to measure and collect data around youth usage, knowledge, behaviors, and perceptions around alcohol. And so in 2016, we utilized that baseline data, we utilized that year to collect information and create kind of our baseline data. And since then, have been surveying annually to see if there has been any changes in behavior, knowledge, and perceptions among young people in Fresno County. We specifically, along with the California Health Collaborative, target those school sites in which we're implementing program to measure if the programs that we're leading and are having an effect on behaviors, knowledge, and perceptions. So this entire program is really rooted in the environmental prevention model and approach. So utilizing the data that's collected from the Student Insight Survey, we share that with our young people. We teach them on how to read and analyze data so that they can select a media access policy or social norms approach for addressing the issue of underage drinking. So YLI youth participants in the Youth Advocacy Leadership League, or the YAL team as we call it, Friday Night Live Club, and Friday Night Live Kids programs receive training in the environmental prevention model, and as well as youth advocacy, youth-led action planning, youth-led action research, project implementation, and evaluation as part of a skill set in order to engage young people in the process of coming up with solutions to address the issue of underage drinking. And to answer Brian's question on the chat of whether the schools that we are targeting are generally in underprivileged communities, we actually utilize a variety of factors. We work in communities, both in the city of neighborhoods, both in the city of Fresno, as well as communities outside of the city of Fresno. And we do look at what are the health indicators in each community to decide if it's a community we should be partnering with, and take into account not just the population of the community, but also kind of like what are the environmental factors within those communities that may create barriers for young people making healthy choices. So as part of this RAAY campaign, what we do is once we've collected the data, we utilize the findings of this survey and other community assessments, which we walk our young people through to conduct either observational assessments, photo assessments, their own research assessments, to develop and select an appropriate environmental prevention campaign to address underage drinking in their schools, neighborhoods, or communities. So based on the findings, the young people will just determine whether in my community is a media campaign the most effective to reaching the targeted population, should we be working on a policy campaign, is a social norms campaign a better campaign? Or should we be working on focusing on access? And so it's really up to the young people in partnership with their site coordinator and their identified advisor, whether it be a teacher in their school or community member, to determine what's the best suited solution to look at in addressing the underage drinking issue in their specific community. Each RAAY project focuses on reducing access to of alcohol to youth by adults, or works towards the creation or enforcement of policies limiting alcohol and other unhealthy advertising in communities to reduce like this, the positive association that youth have with alcohol, especially specifically in this project cycle or this grant cycle. Our focus very much was on advertising after our young people discovered and were able to find research that showed that there is an association between exposure to ads and its correlation to a young person's likelihood to want to consume alcohol or want to consume specific brands. So for the past 4 years, we've been focusing heavily on the impact of advertising has on young people, specifically from the alcohol industry. And each RAAY campaign or project is also creates an opportunity for young people to really become leaders in their community and their schools around underage drinking prevention. What we're seeing happen is that through being exposed and being able to have the opportunity to build their capacity around analyzing research, creating a plan, as well as learning how to do a project implementation and evaluation. They're building up the skills that increases their overall engagement, not just in school, but their overall engagement in the community. And what we found is that on top of our young people helping to reduce underage drinking amongst their peers and their community, it's also teaching them those healthy behaviors and resulting in them making healthy choices for their own lives. It also is exposing them to policy making, civic engagement, and is shifting their own norms regarding the acceptability of youth using alcohol, and also the cultural norms around advertising in their communities. So overall, the entire campaign or the entire projects that are implemented not only serve as a mechanism for educating the young people that are leading the work, but also has even greater outreach because in learning about the issue, in learning about the data, in developing solutions, they're also impacting their larger school communities and home communities.
Perfect. And within the Friday Night Live program, the mission is to be able to build partnerships for positive and healthy youth development, which engage youth as active leaders and resources in the community. And so pretty much going back to this value that we have of making sure we're seeing young people as partners and that they're engaged in every part of the process. There's 47 counties in California that have the Friday Night Live program. They're all housed in various agencies. In some counties, it's housed under a nonprofit, such as we are an example of that, being housed under the Youth Leadership Institute. In some counties, it's housed under the Mental and Behavioral Health Departments, and in other counties, it's within the Office of Education for those counties. And so Friday Night Live started in 1984 by the California Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs and the Office of Traffic Safety. And when it first began, it was actually something the name actually derives from every Friday night they used to hold events so that, because what they saw was Friday nights were the day that young people were out partying and there was alcohol consumption on Fridays. And so on June 1998, there was a transition from having it just be an alternative activity where they're just no longer drinking. And so they would do these events where they had these fun activities for the youth on Fridays, so that they're not having to attend these parties where there's alcohol involved. And it moved into more of a youth development a program. And so there was a huge shift in being able to build the importance of saying that not only do we just need to keep young people from drinking, but that they also need to build up this leadership capacity within this work and to be able to be leaders within these programs. And so there's a few different tiers like within the Friday Night Live program that fall under that umbrella. We have what's called, I'm going to start with the bottom, which is the FNL mentoring, which is actually a program within Friday Night Live where it's high school students being able to mentor middle school students. And so a couple high schoolers get to be able to build up the leadership capacity, provide some trainings for the middle school students, which a lot of times we realize that there's a pipeline between our middle school students, which I'll go into that in a moment, and then moving on into high school, as we realize that we do work within the elementary, middle school, and high school. And so that peer mentoring program really gets to build those relationships between those two tiers. And so within the elementary levels, grade levels for 4th through 6th grade, we have what's called the Friday Night Live Kids program. And so pretty much that's an opportunity for young people to do very introductory work, which a lot of times tends to be more around like, a lot of it is more social norms focused normally for the Friday Night Live Kids program. And so it's more around like educating their peers. And quite a bit of that goes into the next tier, which we call the Club Live chapters, which are the 7th and 8th grade sites. And so pretty much those are called Club Live. And so that then continues with a lot of times we tend to see social norms is what the young people get to work on during the year. And then going into the Friday Night Live, which is the actual high school sites. They get to do a lot more of the media access policy, social norms, often within those programs. And it varies every year. Young people get to decide for their chapters how they want to address the issue and how they want to solve it. And so, those are pretty much the tiers. When we say kind of, oh, this is for example, Gaston, which is a middle school here in Fresno, they're considered, we call it Gaston Club Live chapter. And so just to give you context, pretty much the chapter is given that name with the school site's name in addition. And so, that's pretty much that. And I'll pass it to Cynthia to lead us into the program strategies.
Yeah, as Jose mentioned, and just to answer the question that was on there, we'll hopefully get better. Later on in the presentation, you'll be able to hear specifically about how successful we've been in some of these initiatives and what are some of the initiatives that young people have selected this past year or this coming year to embark on to address the issue of underage drinking. And hopefully you'll be able to see a couple of videos about some success stories, both around access campaigns and policy campaigns. But to talk a little bit about the strategies, so as we mentioned, we utilize the environmental prevention model. But all of our YLI programs and Friday Night Live and our RAAY program included are focused on health equity and prevention and utilizes the social determinants of health lens as a way of understanding the conditions and in places where people live, learn, work, and play affect a wide range of health risks and outcomes. So to address the social determinants of health, YLI grounds their work in the following, and the list of following strategies, all of which are interwoven into the what we call our RAAY and Friday Night Live programs. The first of which is environmental prevention model, where we look at the impact that media, access, policy, and social norms have on a young person's decision-making process. We also look at youth and adult relationships, so the relationships that young people have with adults in their community. We also integrate youth action research, so it's exposing young people to not just learning about research and learning how to analyze data that's been collected by others, but also conducting their own assessments to provide supportive evidence to the recommendations and solutions that they're hoping to propose to those individuals in their community or decision-making authority who can make the change that they're hoping to make. We also focus on coalition building, which is making sure that we're bringing multiple partners and individuals to the table that represent the 14 different sectors in the community to ensure that there's not just community buy-in, but support, but that they recognize that the importance of making sure that there's space for young voice and youth voice at those tables around looking at issues that are impacting the entire community. We also focus on idea incubation, which is making sure that we're really listening to young people. We're being guided by their own lived experience and expertise as being young people in 2020 and how to address the issue and what the issue looks like from their lens and their perspective, and taking their ideas and interweaving them into the solutions and making sure that there is not just buy-in around the solution, but that they're really leading the solution for change. And then last is the capacity building and training, is that on top of building the capacity of our young people to do this, simultaneously building the capacity of the adults who are partnering with young people so that they're better equipped to be able to be at decision-making, to make space at decision-making, the decision-making table for young people, and they're better equipped to be able to partner with young people on their vision for the solution for change. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what these strategies kind of look like when they're implemented on the ground. So when it comes to youth and adult partnerships, where we really focus on is engaging youth and adults to work together in a positive, mutually respectful environment with the recognition that each group contributes unique strengths to the relationship. And the way that we do this is by ensuring that each of our adult partners who work with young people, which includes like our staff, outside partners and advisors, are trained on youth and adult partnerships. And that training consists of doing first a reflective assessment about how you're currently partnering with young people, and then following up by giving you additional tools and building up your skill set so that you can be a better partner with young people on this work. The next strategy is coalition building. So what this looks like is teaching, training, and community building and implementing a process of engaging an alliance of different community sectors to pursue a common goal. So the way that we do this is in each community in which we run a program is we identify like who are those key stakeholders and partners who need to be involved in the process. And that looks like, and that's a variety of individuals, not just teachers, school administrators, and parents, but also bringing in and inviting to the table law enforcement, health professionals, local clinics, as well as faith-based organizations, parks and recreation, and a variety of partners who have a stake in seeing and improving the health and well-being of young people. The next strategy is environmental prevention, which is a community-based strategy that focuses on physical, social, and political environments that influence a person's behavior. So what it does is it recognizes that healthy decisions and unhealthy decisions and behavior is just not a matter of education and personal choice, but there's definitely outside influences that impact those decision-making processes and takes that into consideration as we build out communities. It recognizes that like telling that we can't expect a young person to not consume alcohol just because we tell them not to, but also takes into account like what is the environment around that young person, which may make that healthy choice the harder choice, and looking at removing those challenges and barriers so that making the choice not to drink while underage is the easier choice. The next strategy is youth action research, which is making sure that we're utilizing a data-driven process to provide young people with opportunities to frame the issue and the question, to gather the information themselves, to develop the recommendations for change and really take action. What we've recognized is that when young people are really involved in the data collection process, there's a greater sense of like urgency and passion for wanting to address that issue. And then with idea incubation, what we do is we make sure that we develop, test, refine, and share innovative YAPS, which is an acronym for Youth and Adult Partnership Models for Change, and that we are not just keeping the fabulous ideas and solutions to ourselves, but that we're collecting information about the process and documenting it so that we're able to create tools to share with the field. And then we have capacity building and training, which is making sure that we're utilizing these idea incubated field tested models to equip our partners and other communities with the skills they need to meaningfully engage youth as partner and resources. And so part of this work is done through our Friday Night Live partnership network, which Jose alluded to previously. We're in constant communication with, and making sure that the other 46 counties that are implementing this program are seeing the success of the work that's being led by the young people here in Fresno County, and are utilizing lessons learned, tools, and the experience to help replicate some similar strategies in their own counties.
Perfect. And with working with young people, we have what are called standards of practice. And so that's the other component in this work, is how do we make sure that the work moves forward, right? And so in the very foundation, we have safety. One of those examples of the way that we build safety with our young people, because we realize that these standards of practice are critical as we talk about youth development and youth leadership. Safety, that sense of safety and being in any of our spaces when we're leading meetings is critical, because if there's no safety, they don't really speak up, they don't really get involved. And so one of the ways that we do that is there's something that we call group agreements. So we don't, rather than us telling young people, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do, they get to create as a group and create a document, which normally we write it out on a poster board, a poster paper, and they get to write out what will they agree to as a group, as a collective. And at the end, they all do this kind of like the Disney signature, but they do it with their finger, like with a wand. And so they do it with their finger, and they get to agree on that list of things that they are agreeing upon as a group, where there's respect in that space. And that, for an example of like a group agreement would be, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but what's shared, but what's learned here leaves here. So if somebody shares something personal in a meeting, that somebody doesn't take it out of that meeting and shares it out with the whole world to know. But whatever is learned in this space, that is something that they share out as well. And so making sure that there's group agreements in the sense of how do we create a sense of respect in this space and where everyone is valued. And then relationships is the next standard of practice, making sure that young people feel not just connected to us as the adult allies and as staff, but that they feel connected to their own peers. And we do that through activities. So we have like icebreakers where we make sure that we are very conscious of how they're going to be able to interact with each other, with creating activities where they actually requires them to go out of their own circle to go and say, for example, partner with somebody else who they might not know as well. And so making sure that we are creating those spaces where they can build relationships with each other. And then the next standard of practice is decision-making, which we alluded to earlier. And so decision-making is making sure that young people have a say in what direction we take a chapter. And so that's super critical, because then they take ownership of the work. And then the fourth one is community involvement, which we're actually going to share a little bit. I know that the question in the chat box regarding policy change, and also we're going to share a few of the campaigns and projects in one of the slides coming after. And so community involvement, making sure that they have a sense of understanding their community. And part of it is data collection. They actually get to walk through their community. And for example, when they're collecting data on liquor stores, they actually get to walk the community, take notes. What do they see on the actual windows, the advertisements? And so making sure that they have a sense of like when they're doing park cleanups, that they're actually part of those. And then lastly is skill building. So we recognize that young people's leadership, it takes a mindful consciousness of us being able to train them up and build them up to do the work as adult allies. And that's what we offer our youth. And so how do we measure the work that we do? So every year at the end of the year, we have what's called the Youth Development Survey. And so the youth that are in our programs across the county get to take a survey, and we get to measure how well are we doing what we say we're gonna do. And so as you can see, just a few things to note. I mean, under the section of like FNL promotes resilience, the majority of of those different line items are actually reflected based on the standards of practice. And we're seeing that young people are building up these skills, that they are experiencing these standards of practice in the programs, which are all in the 90 plus percentile. And then we realize that the skills that young people are building, that they're building these skills of being able to work as part of a group, as we realize when they decide on which projects they're working on and when they're actually carrying them out, they need each other. That they all are being assigned, they all self-assign which parts of the project they get to do. And everyone's codependent of each other as a chapter. And so public speaking is another major one. And so one opportunity, and as an example, is we have young people during meetings lead the icebreakers or give the announcements, or also be able to talk about what direction they, in terms of being able to share with the group what direction they're interested in going towards. And so there's a lot of opportunities, and also with the Fall Fest and Spring Jam events where we have young people lead the trainings. And so there's a lot of opportunities for them to build up those public speaking skills. And ultimately we realize that based on, our results, we see that young people, 97% of young people are learning about problems that alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs can cause. And so within this process, they're learning that. And then and 97% of youth report that they support other youth to make healthy choices, because they take on the sense of ownership, and they also are wanting to share with others the experience and the things that they're learning, as they realize that environmental prevention and not just individual choice is actually is effective in helping increase the chances of young people accessing underage, and so accessing alcohol and drugs underage. And I'll pass it to Cynthia for this next one.
All right. So just to reiterate what Jose just shared, is that as part of the program and as part of this process, it's really important that we are developing and taking time to build safety, build those relationships, give decision-making opportunities, and building the skill set of young people to jump into some of the work that we're asking them to engage in. Because as we all know, policy work, leading a media campaign, leading a social norms campaign, or looking at access and talking to merchants, those things aren't naturally easy for young people to do. And I know adults that don't even have the courage to do those things. So our young people are really part of this full process where they're building kind of a family with us, and they're learning about the issue and then engaging in a process to become part of the solution, which is really exciting because a lot of our young people do utilize this as a platform to answer the question that's in the chat box, to jump into additional leadership roles. We have young people who come in as really shy individuals who end up running for class office, or who end up getting an internship with a senator or assembly member, who end up being able to having the confidence to lead a presentation in front of their local city council, who end up applying to four-year universities and jumping into the line of work in which we've been leading. We've actually been lucky enough that we've had a lot of our young people, once they've graduated from high school, come back to us their junior and senior year in college, asking for an internship opportunity. And we've actually also been lucky enough to employ some of our former alum who've jumped in, who have really kind of stepped into these leadership roles and are now helping guide and build up the capacity of other young people. So it's really been fun to see kind of this growth. The YAL team with itself is a leadership opportunity for some of our young people. We've also had young people represent our organization at the statewide Friday Night Live Council level. We actually currently have 2 young people who are representing our county on the California Youth Council, which is the statewide Friday Night Live Youth Council, who frequently does presentations to the Office of Traffic Safety and State Department of Behavioral Health. And as well as we've had young people who've gone as far as travel to Washington, D.C. to talk about the programs that we're doing here in Fresno and their experience and their involvement in our programs. All this to say that with all this training and capacity building and development of young people really leads to these tangible, on the ground initiatives and campaigns that we're really seeing impact communities. One of which was led last year, which was what our YAL team developed called the I Won't Provide campaign, utilizing the data from the 2018-2019 Fresno County Student Insight Survey. They were noticing a couple trends. One was that young people were reporting that when they access alcohol, that it was fairly easy for them to access. And the other, when we asked a follow-up question about where they're accessing from, what young people reported is that they were most frequently accessing it from friends, siblings, other adult family members, and adult strangers. What some of our young people then did is, as a follow-up to this, conducted additional kind of interviews with friends and peers to see, when you talk about friends and siblings, what are you talking about? Who are you referencing? And most young people reported older friends and older siblings and older cousins who were in the 21 to 25 age range, who were old and who were close enough to their age but old enough to be able to purchase alcohol. So what our young people did with this information is they decided we need to get the message to this age demographic not to provide alcohol to minors. That as a young adult, it's important that they're part of the solution to reducing underage drinking rates. So what they developed in partnership with Fresno City College was the I Won't Provide campaign. And so what they've been doing for the last year is specifically creating media messaging and targeting this age demographic to provide information and education around their impact on the underage drinking prevention rates, and asking them to not only pledge for themselves to drink responsibly, but also to not provide alcohol to minors. So they use the hashtag I Won't Provide. We've been utilizing it over the course of the past year to encourage some of our 21 to 25 age range young adults to make a commitment to be part of the solution. And we were lucky enough to be able to partner with Fresno City College to actually host a press conference so that we can specifically target young people who are attending that institution of higher learning to get the message across. And so this pledge was made available on all our social media sites. Each chapter then was able to take this message and then take it to their own communities to try to get momentum and movement around the pledge. And we've also had this pledge actively on change.org, collecting signatures to get a movement going here in Fresno County of young adults making a commitment not to provide alcohol to minors. The other campaign that our young people have been involved in, and this is through our Friday Night Live arm, is that frequently we have the opportunity to apply for supplemental funding to support important initiatives that young people want to embark in. And so this past year, our young people had the opportunity to apply for a small grant through the California Friday Night Live Partnership to engage in some work around tobacco. And so what they did is they recognized the need to reduce the exposure to secondhand smoke, specifically for themselves and for younger youth. And so what we did is we conducted our own assessment to see like, what does this issue actually look like in the community? And especially in green spaces or in spaces where young people usually frequent. So so our young people along with us decided that and the best data to collect is, by doing what we call the cigarette butt and tobacco cleanup at some of our local community parks and county parks. What young people did over the course of several months is they visited several county parks that are listed there: Kearney Park, Skaggs Bridge Park, Courthouse Park, which is in the heart and the center of the city of Fresno, Lost Lake and Avocado Lake. And they put on their safety gear, put on gloves, and we collected cigarette butts and tobacco litter from the parks just to see like what the issue of tobacco looked like, or how frequently folks were utilizing tobacco products in these green spaces where young people frequent. And what we were kind of astonished with the results. We collected in these 5 cleanup sessions over 6,000 cigarette butts and tobacco product litter in these parks. And so as a result, our young people were really, first appalled by this, and second, wanted to do something to address this issue. And so as part of their solution process, they decided to come up with a recommendation for a smoke-free parks policy across Fresno County. And so they've been actively educating the community about the findings of their work. They've also been talking about the impacts it's had on them personally with tobacco use and what it feels like as a young person to be in a green open space when somebody is smoking, and have started educating some of our local decision makers to see if they can get some support around their recommendation to make all of our Fresno County parks smoke and tobacco free. And so we wanted to expose you to a couple of campaigns. Those are just 2 campaigns that we had this year, but we had several campaigns that were led this past year where we've seen a lot of success, where we either did media campaigns, we focused on access, we focused on policy, or we focused on combating social norms. So our YAL team, and I wanted to see if the link will work here in a minute, actually this past year was involved in what we call the Responsible Neighborhood Merchant Act. What they did is in looking at the issue of excessive advertising in some of our most heavily dense populated communities and some of our neighborhoods that have the income level is significantly lower than other parts of the community, and accessibility to healthy food is a little bit more difficult. They noticed that they were inundated with alcohol advertisements, specifically our more urban areas and urban schools. Said that they were, 7 times more likely to see alcohol ad than their counterpart in a community that was a little bit more fluid. And so they took this data and presented it to City Council, and were able to partner with City Council member Miguel Arias to propose the Responsible Neighborhood Merchant Act, which was basically, they're currently working on an ordinance that would reduce or put a limit on the number of alcohol licenses that are distributed or that are made available to folks in the city of Fresno, because we were already over the recommended limit according to alcohol beverage control, and it also looked at putting in some restrictions around the placement for some of these establishments that sell alcohol, and making sure that these establishments were not within 1,000 feet of a school, a nursery, a recovery center, or a place where young people naturally gather, to try to limit some of that exposure that young people were having to alcohol advertisements. So Jose is going to see if he can bring up the video here so that we can share with you a little bit about the work that was done.
Perfect. Awesome. If I can just get a thumbs up from Graciela, if you can just share, if you can see my the video screen. Yeah, okay, perfect.
Council will consider a measure that would eventually cut the number of liquor retailers in half. Action News reporter Gene Hagensen is live at City Hall tonight with more about this proposal. Gene?
That's right, Warren. The proposal would do a number of things to try and restrict liquor and alcohol sales throughout the city, but the most drastic of all is to reduce the number of liquor licenses available. It's being pushed by City Council member Miguel Arias. He says that liquor stores and convenience stores that sell liquor contribute to substance abuse, are a blight on the city.
People are going to drink, but the goal is to, over time, reduce the amount of liquor licenses available in our neighborhoods by 50%.
Arias notes one central city council district has more than 100 liquor stores out of 400 citywide.
The state law suggests that liquor stores should be in the vicinity of 1 for every 2,500 residents. We have 1 for every 1,000 residents.
State regulators aim to limit high concentrations in any one area, but cities have leeway in setting standards, and Mayor Lee Brand agrees Fresno has gone too far.
There's a concern that over the years we've got too many liquor licenses concentrated in certain areas of town, that we need to find a way over time to remedy the problem.
Arias's plan would require anyone who wants a liquor license to buy out an existing license in the same area and close the other store. Fresno Police Chief Jerry Dyer agrees there are too many liquor stores in some neighborhoods, but he supports better regulations on existing businesses.
The ultimate goal is to make sure where alcohol is being sold, that it is regulated in a manner that doesn't cause problems for the neighborhood. That's first and foremost. And secondly is to regulate the number of those establishments so that they're not overly concentrated in certain neighborhoods.
Arias's plan has the support of a local convenience store organization. He notes intense competition has forced down prices so that a bottle of water in some stores sells for more than a can of beer. The measure also includes regulations on liquor in convenience stores and bans excessive liquor advertising. Now, the liquor ordinance is expected to go before the City Council on April 25th. If it is approved, it would take several months before it was actually implemented. Reporting live from Fresno City Hall, Gene Higginson, ABC 30 Action News.
When was the last time you looked out the window? What do you see?
All right, so that's just a short video that kind of demonstrates the work that was led last year by some of our youth members. What they did is we educated our council member. We worked really close with APCA, which is the American Petroleum Association of Independent Merchants, to get them on board as well. We just educated them about the exposure of advertising, the proximity, and the density issue. And a lot of that was done by our young people really mapping where, how many alcohol outlets were within a 1 mile radius of their schools. And so that led to this actually being passed. I think the news reel that you saw was done prior to the passing of the act, but it actually was unanimously passed by our city council last year in May. And we're still actually working on the implementation phase. So there's a couple other campaigns that were led. Our Sunnyside chapter last year did a social norms parent access media campaign where we specifically did some workshops for parents and led some town halls to educate them about cultural norms around the distribution of alcohol. Our Roosevelt also did an alcohol billboard proximity campaign where they specifically looked at large scale advertising in near and around schools. So I don't know if we want to show that one as well. We actually held a press conference. Part of this campaign was not just educating our parents and community around the dangers of having large scale media like that includes alcohol advertising in close proximity to schools, but also replace the billboard that frequently had alcohol ads on it with a youth-friendly ad and an ad that focused on underage drinking prevention.
All right, so it seems like we may be having issues with the video on this one, but this pretty much shows like the billboard that the young people actually decided on. And so pretty much what they, oh, actually, you know what? I apologize, everyone. Let's see. Perfect. Awesome. Can you all see my screen if I can get a thumbs up? Awesome. Pretty much this is a billboard that Cynthia was just mentioning about the Take Back Our Billboards campaign that the youth actually decided on to be able to reduce alcohol advertising. And so what they did was create a positive message. So they chose the slogan of like, I choose my education over alcohol. And they chose one data point, which said that, based on the student insight surveys within their school site, for their school, they found that 80% of Roosevelt High School students here in Fresno have not used alcohol in the past 30 days. And so changing the narrative of alcohol use with young people, because so often we think, adults can think, well, all young people are up to no good. And so this actually changes that narrative and also informs like that young people are not always making these decisions, that there's actually a large group that are actually making positive choices. And so that's pretty much the Take Back Our Billboards campaign that the youth worked on.
Yeah. What was really exciting about this campaign was not only that it exposed to our young people to another facet or another kind of form of media by giving them the opportunity to work directly with Outfront to design the billboard and talk about the placement of it and actually be featured in the billboard. But as a result of the exposure that we got because of the press conference that focused on the unveiling of the billboard, we actually were able to get some national media coverage around the work that was being done and led by the young people at Roosevelt High School. Also, this past year, we had young people leading merchant education campaigns that focused on educating merchants around the sale and distribution of alcohol and reminding folks about the need to card. Also included the education around sticker placement for the We Card stickers that are required. Some of our Friday Night Live Kids programs, which is focused on the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, also led family awareness campaigns where they hosted family nights that brought in entire families to a community event that brought also in law enforcement to educate about the importance of, that family has in exposing young people to alcohol. And then our Gaston Club Live actually created a really fun tool that we still distribute to this day called 101 Ways to Have Fun Without Alcohol, that basically highlights different activities and actions that young people can engage in lieu, on the weekend when you're bored, in lieu of engaging in the consumption of alcohol. And then lastly, we had some of our sites who were both leading tobacco and alcohol policy campaigns. We had some of our sites not only looking at supporting or educating about their recommendation for Fresno County Smoking Tobacco Park policy, but also engaged in making radio PSAs in a partnership with iHeartMedia to educate their peers around the dangers of vaping and utilizing vaping devices for marijuana use. We also had our Selma Friday Night Live chapter engaging in some positive social norms campaigns that focus, similar to Roosevelt, on the habits and the behaviors that are positive that young people are engaging in, and then trying to inform their peers around the behaviors that happen in a party setting that don't necessarily engage alcohol. I think their focus was educating their peers that in a party setting, most young people choose to drink water rather than alcohol. So that was a cool social norm campaign that they did to educate their peers that just because they're in celebration, alcohol is not necessarily needed in order to have fun. And then we had our current Friday Night Live and Club Live chapters also working on a positive social norms campaign that their data revealed that there was a high percentage of youth who identified as athletes who were engaging in binge drinking activities, and were the highest population that indicated that they had consumed alcohol in the last year. So what they did is they created a social norms campaign that really targeted athletes, which they called the Don't Play Yourself campaign, which really tried to change the norms around behaviors of athletes as in those kind of like subgroups, as well as taking the example that was done in Gaston Middle School, and also created a brochure about that included 101 ways that you can have fun without alcohol. That also included some additional activities that young people can do during COVID-19 shelter in place.
Perfect. And so finally, some of you may be asking, how can I get involved, right? So some ways to get involved. I know I alluded to it earlier, but one of them is to be able to join, if you're a member of the community, like join the Adult Ally Advisory Council meeting. Our next meeting is on September 22nd at 3:30, which in the next slide, I have my contact information. You can go ahead and contact me and I can share that calendar invite with you, or anybody who you know might be interested in, if you want to forward it over. We'd love to be able to have you hear about the work that we're doing, but then also be able to partner with us in helping our young people achieve those goals that they have set out for themselves. And so the second way to get involved is supporting a local chapter campaign. So maybe if you are a parent who has a child who goes to a certain school and we have a chapter at that school site, there's ways that you can maybe support us. I know that we've done, Cynthia got to share a little bit about like Sunnyside and how they did a parent campaign, education campaign. And so there's ways where you can maybe help us support and reach out to other parents to attend if that chapter is working on that campaign. Maybe as a parent, you can also help support and be there to help even set up or be able to be someone who speaks up in support of the work that the youth are doing. And lastly, the last way you can get involved is to support some of the county-wide campaigns that the YLI team, which I mentioned earlier is a county leadership team, is working on. such as like the "I won't provide" / "not on my watch" campaign stickers and lawn signs. And so these signs have been put, as well as stickers of this version, have been placed all over the county and homes, so that the people, it changes the social norms. People, when they drive by it, normally you wouldn't see a sign that says something like this, that home does not support underage drinking and does not supply to minors. And so pretty much changing the norms around like family norms, and also what the community gets to see, that home actually supports this project that the youth are actually carrying out. And lastly, you can also support the family alcohol policy, which is pretty much a policy that I can share with you if you just email me. And that's an opportunity for a family to be able to start talking about alcohol, like in the sense of the education and the context of alcohol, and for them to create an agreement as a family. What would happen in a scenario where alcohol is involved in a party that the young people are at, how the adult can provide support without fear of judgment, and also being able to support the young person and young people being able to share with their parents, creating more of a communication between the young person and the family. And so that family alcohol policy is a great way for you to support who are listening. And so if you do have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. My information is there. And my email, my phone number is on there. So I can definitely share any of this, any of the family alcohol policies, stickers. We can actually mail them to you. So it is an actual lawn sign. We can actually have that sent to you. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And that pretty much concludes our presentation.